I'm Rachel Collins. That night, the phone rang in the middle of the rain. My mother's voice was trembling, choked with panic. Nathan, there's been an accident. Come to the hospital. I rushed out in my pajamas, heart pounding. But when I arrived, the doctor looked at me and asked, "Are you the owner of the car listed on this insurance policy?" I froze. The totaled car was mine. Registered under my name. Paid for in installments using a credit card opened with my forged signature. I turned toward my mother, not even able to ask before she grabbed the hand of Nathan's wife. "Is she okay?" Not me. I wasn't the one they worried about. Have you ever realized you were just a shadow in your own family? That love only seemed to exist as long as you were strong enough to carry everyone else? Leave a comment if you've ever been treated like the family's walking ATM. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll tell you the whole truth behind that car crash and the unraveling that pushed my entire family into legal chaos. I remember clearly the first time Nathan got kicked out of college. He called me at 2 a.m, voice hoarse from crying and alcohol, saying he needed $3,000 to fix everything, or he'd be permanently expelled. At the time, I had just started my first job at a small financial analysis firm, still in probation, barely making enough to cover rent and groceries. But I wired the money anyway. No questions. No demands. Because I was his sister. And I thought that's what family does. After that, I started keeping a private spreadsheet labeled Emergency Family Support. Each line had a date, a reason, a dollar amount, and a recipient. I never mentioned it to anyone. I never asked to be paid back. Part of me wanted to believe that if I did enough, gave enough, they'd eventually see. They'd love me the way I loved them. After the pandemic, my father lost his job. An entire year without stable income. My mother worked part-time as a librarian for the county. They started falling behind on their mortgage. Each month came with more letters from the bank, warnings of frozen accounts. One afternoon, Mom called me sobbing, saying she was terrified they'd lose the house. "Your dad doesn't say anything, but he's up every night doing calculations. I hate to bother you, but you're our only hope." I had just closed my first contract for my own consulting firm when that call came. I could have bought my first apartment with that money. Instead, I wired it to my mother's account. $48,000. No strings. No expectations. Just a note, "Don't worry, I've got you." They never thanked me. But a few months later, during dinner, my mother smiled and said, "You should think about settling down. Men don't like women who are too busy. Look at yourself, no one dares date you." I sat there, surrounded by her fancy guest-only plates and sipping wine I'd brought back from a Napa Valley business trip, and listened to her scold me with a smile. I wanted to respond. But I stayed silent. Another time, I walked into the living room and saw them flipping through old photo albums. My mom turned to Nathan and said, "You'll look great in this suit for your wedding." Nathan laughed, saying no girl would marry him since he had no money. My mom, without hesitation, looked at me and said, "Can you help a little? Melissa's a sweet girl. I'm sure you wouldn't mind." That was the first time I couldn't breathe in the middle of daylight. They talked about paying for Nathan's wedding like it was an obvious obligation of mine. As if being too independent meant I had to financially compensate for not being feminine enough. And I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I was too used to carrying what others dropped. So I paid for the entire wedding. The venue, the flowers, the buffet for over 100 guests. Even Melissa's wedding dress was selected and paid for with my card. They took family photos. I was behind the reception table managing vendor schedules. No one remembered to invite me into the family shot. I still have the message Mom sent me that night. "You did great. I'm proud of you. Even if you're not married yet, I know you're our strongest pillar." I read that and couldn't hold back my tears. Whenever Nathan lost a job, I quietly wired money so his wife could buy diapers. When my dad needed a new car to maintain his image, I paid up front and got told, "Cars are for men. Why would a woman need one?" Every holiday, I was the one wrapping gifts, ordering cakes, arranging everything for a proper family gathering. No one remembered my birthday. No one asked, "Are you tired?" I used to believe that if I just gave more, waited longer, they'd understand. That they'd finally see me. But I came to realize, some people never look. Because they never intended to. They only see what they need. And to them, I was never a full human being. Just a financial solution with a beating heart. I wasn't angry. I was cold. cold enough to look back at it all, and finally understand why the word family always made me feel hollow. I started sensing something was wrong when the supplementary credit card I'd given my mother 2 years ago for emergencies only began showing charges at upscale furniture stores, spa retreats, and a luxury hair salon downtown. One charge was nearly $2,000 at a place called The Retreat, a resort I had never stepped foot in. I remember staring at the bank statement like it was telling a story that didn't belong to me. But every number, every line, every charge was my signature, my account, my money. I invited Mom to lunch at a small cafe near the church she still attended weekly. She arrived early, already sipping iced tea and poking at a salad. I placed my phone on the table and opened the printed expense report. When I handed her the paper, she glanced at it, then set it aside. "I don't understand all this, honey." I kept my tone neutral. "You charged nearly $4,000 in just 2 weeks. Spa treatments, a resort stay, shopping at Crate Barrel." She looked at me with hurt in her eyes. "You're monitoring your own mother? Over a few bucks." Before I could reply, she wiped away a tear. "I never wanted anything from you. But your father's sick, the bills are endless. I just thought you're successful. You could help." I took a deep breath. "It's not that you asked, Mom. It's that you didn't ask. You just spent. No heads up. No conversation." Her voice cracked. "Because I trust you. Because I thought you loved me." I did love her. Still did. But that love now felt torn, stretched thin between obligation and betrayal. I looked around. Other diners were glancing over awkwardly. I folded the report and put it back in my purse, changed the subject. I didn't want to make my mother the villain in public. But something inside me had shifted. That night I called Nathan. I wanted to confront him about the second supplementary card, the one I had once given him, just in case you're between jobs. He answered amidst loud music, sounding distracted. "What is it, sis? I'm kinda busy." I got straight to the point. "Did you know you spent over $15,000 on my card in the last 3 months? Silence for 3 seconds. Then a laugh. "So what? You've got money. You make 7 figures a year. Helping family isn't gonna break you." I stayed calm. "It's not about the money. It's about honesty." The laughter stopped. Nathan's tone hardened. "You think you made it on your own? Mom raised you. Dad taught you. Who are you to act like you're better than us?" I didn't respond. But my chest tightened. I ended the call and stood motionless by the window for nearly 10 minutes, watching traffic blur into streaks of light that felt far removed from my reality. The next day I told Harper everything, over coffee at our usual spot. She didn't blink as I laid out the statements, the texts, the emails, the spreadsheet I'd been secretly updating for 4 years. She reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "Rachel, you need to separate finances. You have to disconnect." I shook my head. "If I do that, they'll fall apart. They're using my account to cover utilities, insurance, Dad's meds." Harper didn't budge. "You think you're helping. But really you're enabling. They can't stand up because you keep being their crutch." I pressed my lips together. "I know. But every time I try to pull away, I picture Mom curled up in the dark house, Dad without his medicine, and my brother wandering the streets looking for a job. And then I send the money again." Harper was silent for a long while. Then she exhaled, soft like a sorrowful confirmation. "You're not your family's blood bank. You're a person. A woman. My friend. And I can't keep watching you slowly be drained without doing something." I lowered my head, heart flooded with tangled emotions. Love, fear, anger, and guilt. Not because I gave them money, but because I never had the courage to stop. That night I opened all the documents on my laptop. Every line, every column, every expense I once couldn't bear to revisit. And I created a new file. I named it, The Truth. The party took place on a Saturday afternoon, clear skies, golden sunlight spilling gently over the lawn behind the restaurant. My mother said it would be a simple family dinner, to celebrate my birthday. I didn't expect much, just imagined a modest meal, a few familiar faces, something warm. But the moment I stepped into the backyard, I froze. Hanging above the gate was a huge pastel blue banner with white trim. "Congratulations, Nathan, Melissa. Baby on the way." Tables were dressed in silk linens, balloons shaped like cribs, scented candles everywhere, and a 3-tier cake with a sonogram photo front and center. I stood still as laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Mom ran up and hugged me. "You're here. We were waiting for you to start." She kissed my cheek, then glanced over at a young woman nearby. "Melissa's feeling a little tired. Can you help me out today? She's pregnant. We need to let her rest." I nodded and stepped into a space decorated like a baby shower. But no one said a word about my birthday. No one asked if I was doing okay or if I liked the party. I sat down on a wooden chair beneath a row of lanterns and tried to smile as Nathan stepped out into the center with a microphone. "Thank you, everyone, for coming to celebrate this special day," he beamed. "And no, it's not somebody's birthday," he winked. "It's the day we officially share our joy. Baby Collins is on the way." Applause erupted. Mom cried. Dad hugged Melissa. I sat there, clapping for no one, unmoving. In my mind, Harper's voice echoed, "They won't stop unless you stop giving in." After the announcement, everyone lined up for the buffet. I stood to leave, but a server handed me an envelope. "Miss Collins, here's the total bill you requested. Just need your signature." I looked at the paper. $46,320. I didn't sign. I walked straight to my mother. "Mom, what is this bill?" She turned to me, smiling sweetly. "You already booked the event, remember? The restaurant sent the final total. They said you'd already used your card for the deposit." I didn't respond right away. I turned, scanning the crowd. Family, relatives, Nathan's friends, eating, laughing, toasting. Not one of them noticed the tremble in my eyes. I moved through them like I was wading in cold water. Back at the main table, I pulled from my bag a folder I had prepared. In it were the receipts, every expense from years past. The wedding gift for Nathan. The money for roof repairs. Melissa's spa days during pregnancy stress. I spread them across the table like flipped cards. "What are you doing?" Nathan laughed, but his voice was tense. I turned to Mom. "You called me selfish. Said I didn't deserve a family. Let's tell them the full story." Mom stood up, eyes blazing. "You're embarrassing us. This is Nathan and Melissa's celebration. You're ruining it." I held her gaze. "I didn't plan this party. I didn't agree to pay for it. But you used my name, my card, and now you're asking me to sign off on it." Nathan cut in, his tone sharp. "You're single, what else is your money for? I'm about to become a father. All we wanted was a little help and you're making a scene." I silently pulled out one last paper. The latest statement showing the advance charge from my account made without authorization. A screenshot of the event booking email. The IP address traced back to my mother's house. "I never agreed," I said, my voice calm and cold. "And if this is how you celebrate my birthday, then thank you. I finally see things clearly." Mom began crying. Dad stood, speaking like a command. "Sit down, Rachel. Don't make this worse. We're family. No need to shame each other." I didn't sit. I took one last look around, then walked out of a party that had never truly been mine. The wind hit my face like December lake air, sharp and cutting. But something inside my chest finally felt lighter, like I'd pulled a stone from my heart. The very next morning, I was in Harper's office. She quietly placed a thick stack of papers in front of me, each one a step toward severing ties. Documents to freeze all accounts in my name that my family had accessed. Forms to cancel all of Mom's supplementary credit cards. A legal notice revoking Nathan's banking power of attorney. And an official letter to all credit agencies reporting identity misuse. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled slightly, but I signed. Every signature felt like a crack down the mask my family had worn for years. Harper said nothing. She simply rested her hand on my shoulder after the final page. "Freedom isn't easy. But you're choosing to live honestly." 2 days later, I got the first call from Mom. She called nonstop for 10 minutes. Each missed call came with a voicemail. When I finally answered, her voice was tight with rage. "What did you do, Rachel? The bank says Nathan's access is gone. My card was declined at the pharmacy. You're destroying this family." I stood in the kitchen, phone tucked between my shoulder and cheek, pouring a glass of water. "No. I'm ending the part where I was being used." There was a beat of silence. Then she started sobbing. "I raised you. Gave you everything. Now you turn your back on us." I kept my voice steady. "You raised me. And I paid you back by carrying the finances of this family for 10 years. You called it love. I call it an unsigned contract. And I'm terminating it. I never asked you to do that, she shouted. You took it upon yourself and now you blame us? I looked down at the paper in my hand, the same spreadsheet with rent, wedding, medical, and tutoring expenses for Nathan. Every line a small incision that drained me. You're right. I did it on my own, I said, because I thought it was love. But if love means silent suffering, then it's not love at all. I hung up. She kept crying on the other end. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. 3 days later, Harper called while I was in a meeting. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. Her voice was tense but controlled. You need to know. Nathan just got served by the bank. You're listed as a co-liable party. They're calling it credit fraud. I closed my eyes. My temples started to throb. Again. Using a card in my name. 3 cards. One opened last year, one 6 months ago, one just 2 weeks back. All with forged signatures. I've already contacted the bank to provide identity verification. I sat down on a hallway bench, surrounded by footsteps and warm overhead lights. Harper continued. They've frozen Nathan's auxiliary assets. And since the original accounts were under your name, they're asking you to prove you weren't complicit. I laughed, not out of humor but bitter disbelief. You think I need to talk to a criminal defense lawyer? No. We're going to take a different approach. I saved every exchange between you and Nathan, payment records, statements, emails, everything that proves you had no idea. But you need to prepare yourself. Your family won't let this go. Harper was right. Just a few hours later, I received a text from Dad. You're tearing this family apart. Your brother's expecting a child. Your mother can't sleep. What are you going to do? I didn't reply. I just stared at the message like staring into a wound that refused to close. Then another message arrived from an unknown number. You're dragging the whole family down. No name. But I knew who sent it. That afternoon I went to the bank. Sitting across from the branch manager, I handed over all the evidence Harper had prepared. He reviewed every page carefully, then nodded slowly. We'll escalate this to the fraud division and pause collections on your end. But regarding Nathan Collins, we'll pursue civil litigation if he doesn't pay. I nodded. You're doing the right thing by the law. I just want to be removed from this completely. When I stepped out of the bank, light rain had started falling. I stood beneath the awning for a while, feeling empty. Not because of loss, but because I had crossed a threshold. One where I was no longer the older sister who carried the burden, no longer the dutiful daughter they could exploit. I was just myself. And I knew there was no turning back. Harper came to my office that weekend, knocked twice, then entered without waiting. She dropped a thick folder on my desk and her eyes weren't as gentle as usual. I had been reviewing quarterly reports, but one look at her face told me something more serious was coming. Rachel, she said, voice low, I found something in the county's public records database. The property in Ridge Valley. Your name is no longer on it. I put my pen down, my heart skipping a beat. What do you mean? The land your grandfather left you. The will clearly stated it was yours alone. But 4 months ago it was sold. I shot up. That's not possible. Are you sure? Harper nodded, then flipped to the last page in the file. Here's a copy of the transfer contract. It has your signature. I picked up the paper. My name was there, the handwriting eerily similar. But I had never signed anything related to selling that land. I had never agreed to it. I had never even been asked. You didn't sign this, did you? Harper asked, even though she already knew the answer. I shook my head. No. Absolutely not. She pulled another document from the folder. I compared this to your verified signature on bank forms, office lease agreements, company filings. It doesn't match. This is forged. I collapsed back into my chair, overwhelmed by a storm of shock, fury, and disbelief. That land was where my grandfather used to grow lavender every summer. It was the only place I had ever felt peace as a child. Before he passed, he called me to his bedside and gripped my hand tightly. That little plot of land, I saved it just for you. Don't let anyone take it. I had promised. No. Who signed for me? I asked, my voice hoarse with rage. Harper studied me a moment before answering softly. The documents list your mother as the representative. She submitted a power of attorney letter and a copy of your ID. All very polished. But both appear to have been altered. I closed my eyes. The pain felt like a blade slicing across my chest. She had no right. She had no right, Harper echoed. This is criminal forgery, Rachel. It's prosecutable. I didn't speak for a long moment. Outside the window, the sun lit up the leaves like nothing had happened. But inside me, something had crumbled, not because of the asset but because of the betrayal. My mother. The one I had always yielded to. Who did she sell it to? I asked. The buyer was a real estate company. But the name listed on the receiving end was Melissa. I could barely believe what I was hearing. Pie's sister-in-law? Harper nodded. Her name's on the intake records, though she didn't sign the sale. Likely your mother had her hold the deed to keep it in the family. Keep it? I laughed. A bitter, brittle sound. Keep it by stealing it? I stood and began pacing. I can't believe this. They don't just see me as a walking wallet. They stole the last thing my grandfather gave me. Harper spoke gently. I know this is a hard moment, but I need to ask you something serious. Do you want to file charges? I stopped. If I do that, Mom will say I've killed the family. Harper stood and moved beside me. Rachel, she forged your signature. Sold your land. Used your sister-in-law to cover the tracks. This isn't just a family dispute. It's fraud. I turned away, eyes stinging. I need time. Harper didn't push. All right. But if you want to move forward, I'll handle the filing. I think you should speak to an independent journalist. Your story, it's not just happening to you. I sat down again, heart heavy. I used to believe that if I just kept giving, they would see my heart. But they didn't. They tracked every dollar I earned. And this time they crossed a line. I opened my laptop, quietly pulling up the old folder labeled Grandpa's Memories. Old photos filled the screen. Me sitting by rows of lavender, his gentle smile under a straw hat. I stared into my younger self's eyes. Innocent, trusting, unaware. That girl deserved protection. She deserved to take back what was hers. I turned to Harper. Let's do it. Prepare the lawsuit. And find me an investigator. I want to know what else they took. I realized this had gone far beyond the realm of family the moment Harper sent me a link to a public Facebook post that had already gone viral. My mother's face appeared in the profile picture. Still that soft smile everyone knew. But underneath was bold text. Please pray for my daughter who's lost her way chasing money and power. I read each line slowly. Every sentence crafted like a mother's tearful plea. She's not herself anymore. I raised her with love, but now all she knows is suing, demanding, destroying. If anyone sees Rachel, please remind her that her mother still loves her, even if she's mentally ill. I dropped my head to the desk, one hand clutching my temple, the other gripping my now cold coffee. I didn't feel shocked. I felt cold. Cold enough that nothing stirred in my chest except an aching void. That afternoon, Nathan went live on social media. Harper had warned me not to watch it, but I clicked anyway. A few minutes in, my brother's face filled the screen. His eyes were red, hair unkempt, backlit perfectly as if the scene had been staged. Hi everyone, his voice cracked. I never thought I'd have to do this, but the public deserves the truth. My family is falling apart. My mom can't sleep. My dad stopped attending church groups from the shame. And it's all because of one person. My sister. He held up a photo, me hugging Melissa on their wedding day. She used to be our pride. But once she became successful, she changed. She thinks money can replace morality. He sued our mom. Sued her own family. Comments flooded the screen. This is heartbreaking. Praying for your family. I can't believe a daughter would do that. I turned off the video. Harper entered the room, placed her laptop on the table. You shouldn't watch that. You know what they're doing. I nodded, but my lips stayed pressed tight. They're rewriting the whole story. Turning me into the one with the problem. The unstable one. The heartless one. And casting themselves as the victims. Harper opened another tab on her laptop and slid it toward me. There's more. Your company's lead investor contacted me this morning. Someone in your family sent them a private email. Said you're unfit to lead in your current mental state. I closed my eyes. In my mind, I saw the thousands of hours I had poured into building this company. The nights I fell asleep on my desk. The presentations I gave with a raw throat that eventually bled. Everything I had sacrificed to prove I could lead. And now they called me unstable. And that's not all, Harper added, hesitating. I got a request from a television network. They're producing a segment on emotional abuse in modern families. Their rep said they've already scheduled interviews with your mother and Nathan. I looked up. They're planning to broadcast this publicly? Harper gave a slight nod. And they want to invite you to respond live. I didn't say a word. I walked away from the desk to the window, staring down at the city. Cars moved like they'd never even known I existed. I thought about all the times I paid hospital bills for Mom, covered Dad's hidden debts, stayed up all night fielding Nathan's collection calls. How many years I kept silent. And now they were using that silence as proof against me. Harper placed a hand on my shoulder. You have every right to respond. You have evidence. Legal grounds. But first you have to decide, do you want to stay quiet, or do you want to speak? I looked at her, my voice hoarse with restraint. They want to destroy everything I've built because there's nothing left to take. They think if they ruin my name I'll come crawling back. Harper gently squeezed my shoulder. But you're not the kind to crawl back because of threats. You don't need to hide anymore, Rachel. The truth is too clear now. I returned to the desk and opened my laptop. Nathan's photo from his livestream was still on the screen. I dragged a folder from my desktop into a new one. Inside were voice recordings, emails, saved messages. All proof that I wasn't making anything up. I looked at Harper. Send the press release. And get the legal team ready. If they want to take this public, we'll start by showing the world who the real victim is. I stepped onto the podium in a packed conference room. Bright camera lights hit my face so hard I could barely make out the rows of people beyond. But I could hear the clicking of cameras, the furious tapping of reporters' keyboards, and the steady beat of my own heart. Harper sat in the front row, her eyes locked on mine. She gave a subtle nod as I gripped the edges of the podium and began to speak. My name is Rachel Collins. This is the first time I'm publicly sharing what has happened over the last decade. Not because I want to expose my family, but because I believe there are truths that must be told so others suffering in silence know they are not alone. I opened the case beside me and handed the support staff several folders. On the screen behind me, the evidence began to appear. The deed transfer of the Ridge Valley property with a forged signature. A power of attorney with a falsified ID. A financial report from an independent auditor listing every unauthorized charge made through supplementary credit cards in my name. Then a recording played. My mother's voice, quiet but unmistakably clear. Just put it under her name. He won't sue. Rachel would never do anything to ruin the family. I let the audio fade. Then I spoke again, my voice lower but steady. I used to believe silence preserved peace. I thought if I sacrificed enough, eventually they would recognize it. I was wrong. Silence never protects anyone. It only gives those who exploit it more space to hurt. A reporter stood up, hand raised. Do you have any evidence that these actions were intentional? That this wasn't just a misunderstanding? I looked directly at him. I do. And not just from one incident. I clicked to the next slide. A spreadsheet of transfers, hidden debts, emails between my mother and sister-in-law discussing how to use my name to secure loans. Every row another cut into my trust, but I stayed standing. Then why now? Why speak up only after all this time? Another asked. I gave a faint smile. Because it took me too long to realize that protecting myself doesn't make me disloyal. The press conference lasted nearly 2 hours. I answered every question. Provided every document. Held nothing back. When I finally stepped down from the podium, I felt like I had shed a suit of armor I'd worn for too long. That evening, social media flipped almost instantly. The hashtag #StandWithRachel started trending, growing by the hour. People who had once attacked me under my family's posts began deleting their comments or replacing them with apologies. Messages poured in from women across the country. Your story is my story. My parents forged my signature for loans. My sister opened credit cards in my name. That night, Harper arrived at my place with a bottle of red wine. She sat on the couch and laid a new folder in front of me. I think it's time we turn this into something bigger, she said. I looked at the folder's cover. Daughters Unbound, a legal aid fund for women financially abused by family. Harper continued, I've already drafted the bylaws. If you're ready, we can register within 2 weeks. I know you're exhausted, but there are thousands of people out there who need a place to begin. A place where they don't have to choose between survival and loyalty. I flipped through the pages feeling overwhelmed, but certain. In the end I signed. I don't just want to win a battle. I want to change the rules. Together we launched the fund's first campaign, a free workshop series on financial rights in marriage and family. On opening night, I stood before over 70 attendees, most of them older women curled into the front row like they were afraid of being seen. I spoke. Not as a CEO, but as someone who had once lost her identity, who had her voice stolen in the very home she built. Family isn't always a place where everyone is loved equally. But no one deserves to be turned into a tool, burdened with obligation but stripped of their voice. Harper stood at the back, her gaze filled with pride. I knew there was more ahead. But from that day forward I was no longer alone. And I knew, once truth is spoken, it can never be silenced again. The courtroom that morning was flooded with sunlight from tall glass windows, but no one inside looked at ease. I sat in the front row, Harper beside me, a heavy folder resting on my lap. Across the aisle, my mother wore a charcoal cardigan, hunched into herself like she wished to disappear. My father was absent. Nathan kept his head low, avoiding my eyes. Melissa sat behind him, fingers clenched, her expression stiff as wax. The prosecutor approached the stand, reading the charges in a flat, emotionless tone. Financial fraud. Forgery of legal documents. Identity misuse. Personal gain from individually inherited assets outlined in a legal will. Each sentence landed like a nail in the silence between people who once called each other family. I didn't blink. I had heard these charges dozens of times during prep with my legal team. But hearing them now in open court, I realized they were no longer words. They were the voice I fought so hard to reclaim. The judge, a silver-haired woman with sharp but not cold eyes, called on each defendant to stand. Nathan was first. Asked if he accepted responsibility for using my identity, he spoke a single word so softly I almost missed it. Yes. No excuses. No defense. I looked at him, there was no arrogance, no contempt. Only a chilling sense of surrender. Then it was my mother's turn. When the lawyer presented the deed transfer for Ridge Valley, she began crying. At first quiet sobs. Then choked, uncontrollable weeping. I didn't know. I didn't mean to. Melissa said it was just to hold on to it for a while. I didn't think it would go this far. The judge cut in. Do you confirm that this is your signature? My mother didn't answer. My attorney stepped forward and handed over supplemental evidence. A handwritten note she had left for the real estate company. As long as the girl doesn't find out, it's fine. The judge turned to me. Rachel Collins, as the person whose property rights were violated, do you have any requests regarding sentencing? I stood. My voice was clear but not harsh. I don't want them to go to jail. Across the room, my mother looked up, her eyes wide with shock. Nathan turned to me too, disbelief written all over his face. I didn't do this for revenge, I continued. I don't want them punished for what they did to me. I want them to keep living day by day, facing the truth they tried so hard to bury. I want them to live with the consequences, with the loss, with the knowledge that I am still standing, but I no longer belong to them. The judge nodded and made a note. Your request will be taken into account in the final ruling. Until then, the court hereby freezes all assets involved in the fraudulent activity. This case will be forwarded to the Financial Crimes Division for further investigation of all related parties. I sat down. Harper didn't say a word. She just gently placed her hand on top of mine. She knew I had just turned down the easiest way to get satisfaction. But I also knew the silence I had carried for years would never be a part of me again. As the hearing adjourned temporarily, I stood and began to walk forward. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, soft. Rachel. I turned. She was standing there, tears in her eyes, her voice barely holding together. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it would come to this. I looked at her for a long time. No, Mom. You did realize. You just didn't believe I'd have the courage to turn it all around. I didn't say anything else. I didn't look back. I left the courthouse under a cold midday sun, knowing the final verdict was still ahead. But the real battle for me had already ended, with truth. Not revenge. Not rage. But with a single undeniable statement. I am here. And I will not be silenced again. 1 year later, I stood in the grand hall of the Denver City Convention Center, where over 400 women from across the country had gathered. Under the soft glow of warm lights, I saw all kinds of faces. Young, elderly, hopeful, hesitant. Some had come alone, some brought their daughters, and some still clutched financial abuse records they had never dared share with anyone. I walked on stage, the headset mic resting gently against my cheek. Below, Harper stood near the tech desk and smiled softly as our eyes met. He gave me a thumbs up, a silent kind of encouragement. I opened my laptop and clicked to the first slide. No graphs, no numbers, just a simple question in the center of the giant screen. What does freedom mean when love always comes with a financial price? I began to speak, not in the rehearsed tone of a polished speaker but in my real voice. The voice of a daughter who had learned to forgive herself for staying quiet too long. My name is Rachel Collins. And I used to believe I was a good daughter. I thought supporting my family financially was just natural. That sacrifice was the only way to prove I was a good person. I let my name be used to open credit cards, secure mortgages, transfer property, because I was afraid that saying no made me selfish. There were a few nods in the crowd. An older woman in the third row gently touched the wrist of the daughter sitting beside her. I knew that look. I had seen it in my own mirror. But freedom doesn't come from always saying yes. Freedom doesn't come from silence. It begins the moment you dare to ask, if family love is supposed to be unconditional, why does it come with constant withdrawals from my bank account? I clicked to the next slide. A photo of Harper and me at the launch of the Daughters Unbound Fund. We were smiling, not because we'd won but because we had claimed our own names. Survivors. Not rebels. Not traitorous daughters. I told them about the midnight phone calls. The notes that said, just put it under her name. The courtroom where I chose truth over punishment. No one interrupted. Only the scratch of pens and the silent inhale of those realizing the story was theirs too. When I finished, I bowed slightly and stepped off stage. Not to return to my seat, but to the back row. Harper came up beside me, handing me a glass of water. You just changed the entire room. Before I could respond, a raspy voice called out softly behind me. Rachel. I turned. My mother stood there. She wore a pale brown cardigan, her hair more silver than I remembered. The pride I once saw in old photos was gone. In its place, a woman finally meeting time face to face. I looked at her. Not with anger. Not with softness. Just waiting. I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness, she said, her voice even and quiet but steady. I just want to share my side of the story. From a mother who ruined her daughter, without realizing what she was doing. The room seemed to fall still for a moment. Harper quietly stepped aside. I didn't nod, didn't stop her. I simply stepped back to let her approach the guest microphone. She stood there, hands clasped, her voice still rough but sure. I used to think love meant holding on. Meant control. Meant handling everything for your child even when they didn't ask for it. I thought that if my daughter succeeded, I had a claim in it. I was wrong. Deeply wrong. A woman in the left row started quietly crying. Someone gently rested a hand on her shoulder. My mother went on. I lost my daughter not because she changed, but because I refused to. I'm not here to beg for forgiveness. I'm here to start with the truth. She stepped away from the microphone and returned to her seat. Our eyes met once more. She didn't look down. I didn't look away. Between us hung a long silence, but no longer a battleground. Harper leaned in, whispering, "It's starting. We're changing a generation." I didn't answer. I just looked toward the stage where more mothers and daughters were rising to their feet, reaching for each other, not to pull anyone back but to walk forward together. I know that after everything I've shared, you may be feeling a lot. Maybe anger, sadness, confusion, or maybe like I once did, just numb, unsure where to begin. But if you've listened this far, if something in this story stirred your heart, I want to hear from you. What do you think about family? About the line between love and exploitation? Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace, only to lose yourself in the process? I want to hear your voice. Not to argue, but to truly listen the way I once wished someone had listened to me. And if what I've shared feels important, if it's worth continuing, then stay with me. Follow this channel to hear the stories to come. About families that seemed perfect, relationships cracked beneath polished surfaces, and the people learning one day at a time how to heal.